Yellow. This is Aural Hygiene. It's a podcast where we talk about educational films, cult and experimental films, interesting documentaries. Matt is talking to you here. Andrew will be talking momentarily.
That's right. I'm talking to you from here.
Right. So it's a relatively recent documentary. I guess New York Times produced documentary.
Yeah, 2019.
And this is Britain's first female rock band. What was the name? Yeah, Britain's first female rock band with the almost famous nomenclature attached, which I actually did recently. So it's like we're kind of doubling down. So about the liver birds, even though it looks like they're liver birds, which is not a cute sounding name.
Which is weird because they're named after the liver bird, which is like the official bird of Liverpool, which we say Liverpool. So why do we say Liverpool, but we don't say liver bird or liver birds?
Because that would be a terrible name for a band of ladies.
Liver birds. It kind of still is.
Yeah.
But anyway. I'd never heard of them. Had you?
No, that's one of the reasons I got on this one, because as you know, I have like savant level knowledge of like, 60s music scenes and beyond, jazz, all that. I have lots of musical knowledge, and this one is never. I'm wondering if I might have read them as like a footnote in a book somewhere and just kind of like not really noticed because it was just like another band on that night was the Liverbirds or something, whatever, right? But yeah, this was. I mean, it was almost like watching a mockumentary, but it's not.
Yeah, I know. You sit there going like, God, this really did happen. And I guess it's because they were really only around for about 5 years. They really didn't. They were really mostly their success was in Germany, and also they only had 3 original songs.
Correct. So I mean, you get away with that in the mid 60s, but yeah, I guess 65, 66 is where you couldn't really get away with that anymore, I guess.
Yeah. No, I just loved hearing the story, and it sucks that this wasn't done like 10 or 11 years earlier because they all were alive. I think they did a reunion. They all lived to reunite in the late 90s, but by the time this documentary was produced, there were only 2 living: the drummer and the bass player singer.
Yeah, I found another YouTube video which had those 2 surviving ones with some younger ladies on stage, but
yeah.
So
yeah, this is cool. I loved hearing how they formed because it was basically like they got into the Beatles right in their earliest times, and then they just were like, we should do this, we should play, which is bizarre because Beatlemania and all of that, girls and women were meant to just sort of scream and adore the band, not be in their own.
But I mean, they looked at that and said, "Hey, that's cool. I want to do that." Which is they were appreciating the music, I guess, more. So I did find it interesting. I looked up just a week earlier. Like I was like, "What is the earliest Beatles footage?" And yeah, this some other guy film track. It seems to be the only thing they have video of them in the cavern. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, the whole thing to me was a little mind blowing, because my thing was like, okay, well, first of all, they made John Lennon kind of look shitty.
Wait, John Lennon was shitty in the 60s. That's one of the reasons I find Lennon interesting, because he was a complete prick and kind of realized it and seemed to later in life like self-improve himself.
Yeah, kind of live as an apology for how he was, or at least live out the rest of his life as a make good. But yeah, because he was the one that told them. I think they got backstage to meet the Beatles, and John told them that girls shouldn't play or didn't play guitar.
Yeah, once Yoko was around, she would have slapped him if he said that.
Yeah, no. So you definitely know this is early, but yeah, one of the mind-blowing things about it was just how many bands, when she starts to list all the bands that the Liverbirds opened for, it's nuts.
Right. It's almost like like the Mighty Wind, bands or something.
Exactly. That's a perfect real way to describe it. Yeah, but this really totally happened.
Right. So I don't know. We used to play in lots of bands. I'm sure we said something probably not quite as misogynistic in that way, but but I'm sure we said something absolutely horrible when we were 18 and playing gigs.
Well, I do remember in practice, like a lot of girls would hang around practice. Like that was kind of a thing for a while. It's everybody like people's girlfriends or the girlfriends plus their friends. I can remember times when, you know, they were just all sitting on the floor when we were playing. And I remember like asking one, because I knew a few of them could sing. I was like, does anybody want to just sing? And I was never taken up on it. But I clearly remember after the Fetal Pigs, our first band, that Chris Jones, which is on an earlier episode that he was in with us. I remember after that band dissolved, wanting the next thing we did to have a girl from our school be the singer. And I'd actually asked Kristen Pettigrew to do it. And she was going to do. I don't remember why it didn't happen. But yeah, I can remember wanting girls in the band, not the opposite.
Yeah, yeah. I think the thing here is it's all female. I mean, you know, you got the Jefferson Airplane where you have prominent female member, or, you know, like
Yeah.
Fairport Convention, you know, Sandy Denny. Although I guess even all that's like a couple of years after this. But yeah, it's just girl groups like the Shearers and stuff at this point in time, really.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, it totally is.
sorry, one aside on those band practices. Do you remember what I'd show up with for my dinner?
No, I don't.
No, because this was around dinner time. I get home from school and then come to your place for the practice, right? So I hadn't eaten anything yet. We'd played till like 7 or 8. So the first couple times I showed up with like real food and would get half my food stolen by, you know, cute girls, right? So I just started showing up with fried clams, and like nobody wanted that.
Oh my God, fried clams.
Yeah, from like Long John Silver's or Captain D's or something. I just show up with
Oh
fried
my God,
clams, and then nobody wanted to share my food anymore.
but that,
Or
you know,
steal my
that
food.
was, yeah, no, that's a real technique. Because later when we'd be out in the van, like going somewhere or on any sort of trip, Dan, the drummer who also drove the van, he would always buy like the grossest snacks at the store or the most obscure brands, so nobody would ever want to steal his snacks that he had for the van.
Yeah, you find the weird thing you want, and yeah, you roll it that way.
Yeah, so
um,
nobody, no, I have no recollection of the times we practiced or anything anyone ate. It's all very foggy for me.
something here that's it's one of them was like thinking about being a nun or something. That was kind of
That's so
trippy.
cool. It was, yeah. Mary, who was the who played bass and sang, because yeah, they're a 4-piece, and so they had drums, they had lead singer, they had guitar, and then they had bass. And so yeah, Mary was going to be a nun, but she went for rock and roll instead. You just,
No,
all you usually hear about is the rock and roll lifestyle, because they do talk about some drug use, not like heavy. Although one of them did eventually get hooked on cocaine, I think, and among other things. One of the ones that died had a drug problem, but not the nun.
right. Yeah, because there's a J-pop group about 10 years ago, the Funky Monkeys babies. Nothing funky about them whatsoever. Completely unfunky. It was like
Completely.
even yeah, like Japan's bad about that. There's like a band called Acid Man. I'm like, oh, that's gonna be awesome, like crazy dub, not just generic, like kind of like fake punk rock. So
What's
anyway,
the acid part?
it's just the name. It has there's a girl, a female singer that goes by the name Superfly, but she's just a J-pop singer. She's not doing like you know, like 70s funk or anything.
She's
That's the
not.
thing. Anyway, the point is, don't get excited that it's a funky name. It was like super like not funky music, because the producer would just stand at like a turntable or something, not really doing anything and waving his arms around. I mean, he did all right, done his job. He's a producer, but no live music. Two singers not quite in key with each other, but they were a big band. But anyway, that producer famously quit to go become a Zen monk, because he's like, my whole life, I, you know, my family, I'm in the lineage to be the next Zen monk of this family, and so I'm going to be a big pop star for 5 years and then go be a Zen monk, which I guess is what he's been doing for the past 8 years or so.
That's pretty badass. No, I think the big thing about this is, why didn't they become more famous? What was it that stopped them from becoming not as famous? And one of the decisions they made was the Beatles manager was actually interested in managing them, but they turned him down.
Yep. It's like, I've been making music with Scott for years. He's like, oh, we just need to find our own Epstein. The Brian Epstein, excuse me. You gotta qualify that these days.
Oh God.
Yeah. So he hasn't been saying that so much recently. So
Yeah,
but
no,
yeah,
it
it's like,
doesn't
yeah,
quite. You got to specify.
they got him thrown in their face and turned him down. And again, like you mentioned, like it, well, the Rolling Stones, their manager basically locked Mick and Keith in a room and said, "You're not coming out till you write 5 songs."
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
the Rolling Stones were not interested in writing songs. They got forced into it. So maybe, if they had gotten a little more pushed, that could have happened. The Beatles were pretty quick to write songs on their own, of course, and then start giving them out to other people. But
yeah. There was so when I watched it, I wondered that. I also wondered about their image because they they were not dressing like a girl group would dress. You think of like the girl bands, and you think of groups like Fanny or the Runaways. There was like a conscious sort of sex appeal that these bands had, but that wasn't something that the Liverbirds were interested in doing.
no, they wanted to basically dress more or less like the boys. I guess they had a little bit more floral and stuff, which just made them look psychedelic a few years early. But
Yeah, yeah, but
um,
there wasn't a whole lot of that either.
I feel like it's kind of a similar look that Mo Tucker and the Velvet Underground had.
It is. No, that's a great way to describe it. They just, yeah, they're one of those. You used the term early on in the show of almost famous, and they were like playing to large crowds. They were really well liked, but I think if there was one thing that made the difference with them, and they're not regretful or anything. I mean, it's the new interviews and stuff which propelled the narrative of the documentary. They seem to be more glad that they became lifelong friends. That's kind of what they got out of it, which I thought it was wonderful. But when watching it, you can't just think, if they'd have done this thing, would they have gone elsewhere? Do you think it would have mattered, or it just the world wasn't ready for something like that? Like the pop music wasn't ready for something like that. It was male dominated.
I think
They would have
peanut
been a
butter was a
novelty.
bad choice.
Well, it would be for me because I'm deathly allergic to it.
Oh, right. But I mean, as a song too, right? It's just that's not a good song.
No, it's not. And if they put jelly in there, well, you basically have a maxi pad with shit and blood clots on it.
Yeah, and then they play. I think the next cut was one of their original songs, and it wasn't bad at all. So it's like,
No, it
dude, write
wasn't. And
some
I
more
think
songs.
I feel like Mary was the one that wrote them. Like she may have
Uh,
been the nun.
no, actually, Pam was the guitarist.
Oh, it was Pam. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
checked that right before we got on the line. Oop. So,
but there is a musical, a stage musical about them, and it seemed like it was kind of a hit, and they're actually part of it. They come out at the end and play with the like actors who are supposed to be their group. So the
right.
surviving members come out on stage. I thought that was great.
Yeah, like I say, you can see I did run a few extra YouTube videos which had the full one of that, so it's kind of interesting to see.
Cool. Yeah,
Um,
I would love to see video of the '98 reunion
yeah,
with all four.
I put it in my notes, but I listed what my '60s girl group is.
What is it?
Well, okay, if you don't remember, you got to take a guess.
I don't remember.
The
I have no guess.
Shags. You've heard the Shags, yeah?
I totally forgot about the Shags.
Because that is just weird stuff. So it seems
God.
to talk about a Twilight Zone.
Yeah, no, I recorded that off of you at one point, but it was again for its novelty value, you
Yeah,
know?
but it is weirdly hypnotic as well. So
No, it is. And of us, I was the one that ended up playing with a lot of all girl groups or all women groups and having bands that were at least half women later on. Um, but yeah, as far as the history of all female groups are concerned, if the Liverbirds are not the first, who would be the first?
well, like, yeah, I guess we can't count the girl groups because they would have already been around. Keep in
We're
mind,
talking rock groups.
this is about the time the self-contained band really becomes a thing too. So you couldn't have gone too much earlier,
No, and if you go earlier than that, well, there's no real rock and roll per se.
Yeah, I'd
There's like
say,
what?
the Crickets would be the closest thing you're going to get before about 62.
Yeah. So maybe they were.
Yeah, because otherwise it's vocal girl groups, right? So, um, and I'm trying to think of what is the first like straight up like rockers, because the Runaways is what comes to mind, but I'm not sure that's correct.
Yeah, it's either Fanny or the Runaways, and I feel like there's a documentary coming out about them.
Yeah, so because that's definitely different, because 63, especially in England, they're still they weren't really going nuts yet, at
No,
least
they
not
weren't.
on stage.
But the idea of putting it together in a space where men were kind of the ones dominating it, I think that's where the appeal lies for me. Just to hear them say that was their kind of MO, that they really wanted to do the same thing.
Well, initial pioneers usually have a pretty tough road to hoe. I mean, with filmmakers, some of the filmmakers that we do here, we've done the cinema and transgression folks, we've done Stan Brakhage. It's like those guys never had a ton of money,
No.
and not that many people have really seen their work, but it's permeated into other stuff. So
Yeah,
you're
being
like, you watch
being
Seven and you're like, oh wow, those are cool credits. Everyone saw Seven, right? Well, that's because Brackage figured out how to do that stuff.
yeah, no, it's true. And being the first, at least having this sort of recognition in their lifetime before they're all dead, I think is great. So that's why this documentary is so cool. Is because you actually got a couple of them before. I mean, because they're still alive, but for how long?
Yeah, because I'm sitting here trying to think of another 60s girl group other than the Shags, like all girl group, and I'm kind of not hitting anything.
No, no, someone would have to, and if there was, you would probably know. But I do think it's cool that you had no awareness of these
Yeah,
uh, prior to seeing this. So that's
right.
that's
Yeah, that
cool.
blew my mind again. That's why I kept saying, am I watching a mockumentary? I'm not. This is weird.
Yeah, no, it's a part of a series at the New York Times. I don't know if they still do it, but yeah, in 2019 they put this out. And so I had no idea who they were either. And thanks to this video, we do.
So what is your ultimate girl group? Because of course, we got lots more from the 90s up, which is good.
Yeah, so all woman group, ultimate
Yeah,
all woman group.
yeah,
Oh
for
man,
you.
for me, um, I would say Big Joni probably. They're the best.
Oh, actually, I don't know. I thought you were going to say something, Bikini Killer, Slater Kenny or something. So,
No, I really enjoy those groups, but I don't tend to listen to them as much anymore. I tend to enjoy some of the newer stuff, and Big Joni's probably my favorite. So if you get a chance, check them out.
yeah. It's not a band, of course, but I've always really liked PJ Harvey songs from the city, songs from the sea, or whatever it is, which is weird because I
Mhm.
actually don't like most of her albums. Not that there's anything wrong with them. It's just not, like what I feel like hearing that day. It's a little too angular, I guess.
Yeah, no, it can be abrasive at times. PJ's got so many different records that you can kind of almost put one on to fit the mood. She's got
But
a lot of
yeah,
different.
that particular album though really does do it for me. That's for me. I've always thought that's what Wayne's girlfriend should sound like in Wayne's World. She'd
Oh
come off doing that instead. Holy crap! Of course, then she would have teared Wayne's head off. But
no, Stories from the City. Yeah, that one's a more accessible. A lot of like kind of poppy
yeah, I'm aware
material.
that's poppier than her normal jam. But and actually, I think one of her more recent ones I liked pretty well too. Is it Let England Shake? So it's like definitely
Yeah,
someone with talent that just isn't always doing the sort of thing I'd like to hear, basically.
yeah, yeah. No, but yeah, Big Joni probably. I love their sound. I love all everybody on their instrument is like really, really, really unique in what they're getting out of the instrument. And, the sound does come out accessible. So
Yeah, which is important. I think a few years ago I was rolling through the Sleater Kenny, which for me that's about a 50-50 rate, which is pretty good because a lot of bands suck harder than that. So
yeah, no, All Hands on the Bad One is my favorite Slater Kinney record. I like them all, but that one's my favorite.
Although I do have to admit I like Portlandia better in the end, but
That doesn't count, man.
yeah, that's what I think of her now, I guess. And that, when I'm like, oh wait, she's in a band too. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, anytime they have a band in the show, it's always funny because you're like, oh right, right.
Well, yeah, in that case, both of them are like pretty top flight musicians.
Oh my God, Fred Armisen. Yes, yes, definitely.
Have you seen some of his quote unquote drum lectures?
Yeah,
Those are
great.
always fun. And the what is the guy that loves Margaret Thatcher?
Oh no, you know what? God, there's one SNL skit. I know you had to see the YouTube clip where they've got like their old punk band. They get it back together for the
That's what I'm
daughter's
talking.
wedding.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Sorry, that's something different. Yeah, that is one of my favorites. So
yeah. It's like food fight in the parking lot or something like that. That they
yeah.
the song that they did. I'm like, oh
Deep
shit,
Six
this
is
is
the
actually
wedding
really.
cake. Well, yes, because they got like yeah, Fred got his chops. Dave Grohl's there,
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and Bill Hader's one of them too.
with the mic fail. I love that.
Yeah,
Dave Grohl's. I'm like, was that intentional or was that an actual mic fail? I
that
hope
was
it was an
funny.
actual mic fail. So
It was because it's a live show, so that's part of the exciting thing about seeing it live.
yeah. So yeah, I didn't do that when I played at a wedding. But we yeah, maybe one day we can make that happen.
That'd be fine with me, dude.
What are you making happen these days then?
Let's see. My friends and I here in Athens, we make movies together. We are called Gonzorific, Gonzorific. We got a YouTube, we got an Instagram, we got a Face Space, we got a Twitter, we got all those things, and we got a lot of movies coming out this year. And I'm sure I'll mention it as the time gets closer on one of these very episodes.
And this is Aural Hygiene. We are on Facebook, Twitter, all those things. You're listening to it now, so you got this far. We're under the umbrella of Podcastius on Patreon, where we talk about sci-fi movies, and other folks talk about Monster Hunter and Pokemon. Okay, it's got the accent, right? So
Pokemon.
Pokemon.
Come on, Cletus.
Pika. That's what a liverbird sounds like. Pika.
Pickle peppers.